Hello and welcome to a very special edition of this podcast. I'm your host, Guy Cocker. Tonight, Microsoft lifted the lid on its next Xbox, which it's calling the Xbox One. I was in central London to attend the official screening. Not too exciting on its own, but thankfully Xbox UK marketing boss Harvey Eagle was on hand to fill in the gaps in Microsoft's presentation, including elaborating on the console's always online and used game policies. I was also able to speak to some of the UK's leading journalists on what they thought about the event, including highs, lows and predictions on how much the Xbox One will cost when it launches. Before we get into all that though, a little about the machine itself. The Xbox One will ship worldwide before the end of 2013, and it will include the next version of the Kinect sensor. It will be an entertainment hub, running TV services alongside games, movies and music, and it will snap between them all instantaneously. The box will also allow you to turn it on and navigate it completely by using vocal commands, and will recognise your voice to instantly sign you in and present a customised dashboard when you log in. One of the new features is the Trending tab, which will show you what content your friends are consuming, and there'll also be Skype integration as well. On the tech side, the Xbox One will be packing an 8GB of RAM, Blu-ray, USB 3.0, Wi-Fi, silent operation, and the 500GB hard drive. Crucially, it's not backwards compatible with games at all, so you'll have to keep your old Xbox 360 around if you want to carry on those multiplayer games of Halo 4. However, you will be able to play back media such as movies and music that you previously bought through Xbox Live. Microsoft was keen to stress that the console won't require an always-online internet connection for playing games or watching Blu-rays, although obviously the overall experience will be improved with an online connection. Your gamer score, gamer tag and achievements will all carry over to the new machine too. In fact, the biggest unknown right now is just how used games will work. You'll have to install all games to the hard drive, that's a mandatory installation, at which point they become locked to that machine and you no longer require the disc. Microsoft is talking about an unlocking system if you want other people to be able to access that disc on different accounts. So, plenty of new information on Microsoft's next Xbox was unveiled at the event. I spoke to 3 high-profile journalists from 3 very different parts of the media at the event to gauge their reactions. Simon Miller is the editor-in-chief of UK-based specialist game site videogamer.com. Nate Lanxon is the editor of technology and science site wired.co.uk. And Matthew Handrahan is a writer for the industry-focused Gamesindustry.biz. I asked each of them what they liked about the new machine, what they didn't like, and when they think it will launch and at what price. Alright, I'm joined by Matt Handrahan, who is the staff writer for Gamesindustry.biz. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Matt, tell me, what was your takeaway from the Xbox event here in London tonight?
Well, I think that the takeaway is clearly it's going to be what we all kind of imagined it would be, which is an all-in-one entertainment device. That's the phrase they're putting behind it.
Well, it's Xbox One, isn't it?
Xbox One, yeah, that's the name. I mean, but for me, the takeaway was that it sort of works much better than I imagined it would. I think as gamers we all sort of fear this idea that our games consoles are no longer just going to be about games. But when you see how it works, and I mean, I don't really use my Xbox console my Xbox 360 for much other than playing games at the moment, but mostly because I find it quite cumbersome. You can only do one thing at a time and so on and so forth, and it does seem to address a number of the issues that I have at present with my machine. So I was quite kind of heartened at the way you can switch between things, have a couple of things working at the same time. I really think it's got potential, and I do sort of agree that there is a problem with how complex the world of entertainment has become. If like most people, you're connected, but you also have a TV, you have various subscriptions to various sites and platforms, and it would be nice in theory to have something that unites that, but then as with all conferences, you have to take it with a pinch of salt.
Sure. Is it that difficult, Matt, to switch between devices if you want to play a game or watch a Sky, whatever you use?
It depends how lazy you are, and I prefer to be sitting most of the time. So if everything's within an arm's reach, then I guess it's absolutely fine. But if it's over the other side of the room, then I just think of something else to do.
So basically, when you said, I don't think you said the word weakness, but the problem of the current generation is that basically it's difficult to move between movies and Skyping and games. And it's basically that multitasking element for you.
Absolutely. And I do feel that particularly now, we do forget how rudimentary the original Xbox 360 was, how much is there now that wasn't there at the start. I mean, we're talking 8 years, and in that time, just all over the web, all over cloud-based services like Netflix and Spotify, I mean, this stuff has come on leaps and bounds, and the Xbox ecosystem has changed hugely, but they are limited by that hardware. So what we've seen today is evidence of what an 8 gig, new architecture can actually do. But I actually think, that could really just be scratching the surface. Like, there will be people out there, there will be companies out there who've got nothing to do with games that will be able to look at this and and these 300,000 servers and really figure out interesting stuff to do that even Microsoft won't have.
Right.
But then that raises the question of how open their ecosystem will be, which is the one thing they didn't really address.
No, they didn't. Yeah, they were talking a lot about cloud services. I think they said cloud services 10 times during that presentation. And then the trending aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
You're on the industry side, so correct me if I'm wrong, your readers are on the development, business and publishing side.
People within the industry as opposed to outside and looking in.
What, from your experience, what's the reaction within the industry? Obviously, not to the Xbox event that's literally just happened, but with in general with Xbox and PlayStation.
Well, I think that the general opinion. I mean, a lot of our readership, we do get CEOs of companies and executives and so on, but a lot of them are just sort of low-level indie game developers, and they feel isolated by the Xbox.
Right.
I mean, this is pretty well established by now.
This is something I've heard as well, yeah.
Yeah, figures like Phil Fish and John Blow, I mean, they've come out and said that it's just a nightmare to work.
Mike Bithell as well, last night I was talking to,
a nightmare to work with these companies. And Sony definitely addressed that in their PS4 conference. That was one of the first things that they addressed was...
Jonathan Blow exclusive.
Yeah, we're going to welcome people in. Microsoft didn't go there, and I think that's somewhat of a shame. I don't know how much we can read into that, because one thing they did reinforce was it's a 2-part story. Part 2 is games. This is TV, combined entertainment, multimedia.
Sure, and that'll happen at E3, we think.
Well, yeah, I think it will happen at E3 if it happens at all.
Okay.
But honestly, I don't feel great that it's going to happen. That's what the PS4 is offering,
right?
And Microsoft does need to think about offering something slightly different,
right?
And if it's obviously going much bigger on the multimedia side, original TV content. Sony's not doing that, so I don't think it necessarily needs to offer that in order to make itself a saleable product.
From a business perspective, where do you think Microsoft now lies? Because obviously they've got huge cash reserves, they've got a lot of successful businesses that aren't just their entertainment division, whereas Sony has been hemorrhaging cash for a number of years now.
Yeah.
Are they? I mean, do they have the infrastructure still to be able to deliver consoles to retailers? And
well, I think this is a huge question mark. I mean, it's a good question because. When we talk about Sony and Microsoft for a long time, we've been used to talking about them as sort of equal rivals. If anything, Sony on the front foot. But he's always forgotten the fact that Microsoft is a much bigger company by orders of magnitude, with ready streams of cash coming in all the time. Whereas Sony, I mean, honestly, the PS4 tanks and does badly. It could be the last roll of the dice for the whole corporation. Like, we shouldn't underestimate how important the success of the PS4 could be, because there isn't really another division of that company that has the potential to resurrect the whole thing. Whereas Microsoft, look, I mean, this is what it's been leading up to ever since the introduction of the Xbox, taking over the living room. This is its big play. This is the Trojan horses within the walls, as it were, and they're all about to jump out and see. But the problem is, are they going to do that? I don't know. I think it's almost impossible to tell, because although we were told, they don't see themselves as competitors with Apple TVs and Google TVs, they definitely are.
Sure.
They are.
Whether they like it or not, they are.
Now, whether they like it or not, they are. Whether they can compete with that, I'm not so sure. They've definitely got an ecosystem, but parts of that are weak. Windows Phone is pretty weak. Windows 8 hasn't convinced.
Just Surface.
So it's how they're going to bring it all together. Personally, I thought the Xbox One, from what we saw today, is looking quite promising.
Cool. And the Xbox One was really a genuine surprise. I don't think anyone had suggested the name Xbox One, unless I missed it. It was very surprising.
I feel like, thematically it works. It's about unification and bringing everything together. But for me, more than anything, what it really does is put the emphasis back on the word Xbox.
Right.
It hasn't got a fancy, weird name of it. It's not Xbox Infinity or Durango or whatever. It's Xbox One. So we can just not say the one part and just get back to Xbox. I think that's kind of what they're after. I also think that maybe it's about making sort of a break with what's gone before,
right,
on some sort of level. I mean, I doubt they would ever agree with that, but Xbox One does sound like back to the bottom line again, back to the drawing board almost. A new proposition.
We touched upon the stuff that you liked, so the multitasking element and being able to switch between various medias. What you don't like was maybe the lack of games. Was there anything that you felt was lacking from the presentation? I mean, it was a short presentation.
Yeah, it was a short presentation, but merciful. If you've ever had to sit through a Sony 2-hour one, then I think
2.5 hours
after about 80 minutes you start really feeling maybe 90 minutes would be better. But I do think it's lacking in games. What I thought it was lacking was in new games. I mean, they showed little snippet, the Remedy game, but who can tell anything based on that 20 seconds they showed?
Sure.
What I didn't think we needed was 5 minutes of EA Sports talking about the next FIFA and 2 minutes of athletes talking,
which they
about
led
sports.
on as well. That was the first thing.
It's a very strange thing, and for me personally, it closing on Call of Duty, I'm sure it floats any number of boats, but it doesn't do much for me. So what I want to see is these 8 new IP they're talking about, but they did say it's a 2-part story at the beginning, and they reiterated, and that is coming at E3. So in 3 weeks' time, we're going to get that full hour, and it's going to be games. All they've done here is leave the way clear to reassure you that the games are there, and I wouldn't bet against them. They've got money. They've got oceans of money to spend on this stuff, and they need to spend it.
So we had an interesting session after the presentation, which was being streamed from Seattle with the UK marketing boss Harvey Eagle. I mean, I thought there was some interesting stuff that he said about that. He clarified, although maybe confused a little bit on used games, but also said very clearly that it wasn't going to be always online, and that wasn't going to be a requirement. I mean, I assume Microsoft would want that, but they kind of had to bow to commit to the public, right?
I feel that Microsoft. Now, I mean, this is another thing with Sony. Sony bought Gaikai, and that made everyone think, oh, they're big on the cloud. People forget that Microsoft have been big on the cloud since 2000. Like they've got Azure, they've been investing heavily in this. They see the cloud as the future. They see always on as the future. And I believe they see it happening within this console's lifetime.
Right.
Whether or not they plan to release it always on out the gate, I don't know. But I think they foresee an always-on future before the next Xbox is necessary, if another Xbox is necessary. But that's definitely another topic and another podcast, probably.
And they can do that, they can do that within this life cycle.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to do this, Matt. I'm going to push you for a prediction. Get your crystal ball out. What do you think? I mean, they said that the console will launch worldwide before the end of the year. Rough release date and price. What do you think they're going to go for?
I mean, I feel like if it's only one SKU, I'm going to go 349.
Yep. That's pounds.
Pounds, yeah, definitely 349. If it's 2 SKUs, I would imagine 50 quid lower than that. It will release.
Why would there be 2 SKUs? Just out of it, because they said they're going to need Connect. It's going to need Connect.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you still think it could be a cheap hard drive?
The rumours for an awful long time were that it was going to come out with a partner console that was largely focused on kind of streaming. I mean, that seems quite unlikely now.
Sure.
And we also have to have details of whether it's just only one hard drive and whether or not there's going to be a slightly different architecture for a lower...
Or the subscription model as well.
But maybe that's looking unlikely now. But I'd go sort of 300 to 350, but I would settle on 350, and I think we're looking at October, early November.
I need to get some sort of prize arranged for the closest guest tonight. Matt, where can we find more of your work? Where are you?
Well, visit Gamesindustry.biz for the best of all trade journalism, in my opinion, but I would say that anyway.
And on Twitter, are you...
at Matt Handrahan.
Great stuff. Thanks, Matt.
Grand.
I'm joined now by Simon Miller, who's the editor-in-chief for videogamer.com. Simon, welcome.
Thanks, Guy. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
It's good to be here. So we're at the London launch for the Xbox One, the next Xbox. Give us your overall impressions, having just seen the presentation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think there'll be a few people out there that may want it a bit more, but I think we've all got to remember that E3, as we record this, is only 19 days away. And you can't, for lack of a better term, shoot your load. Shoot your load too soon. People don't like that, as we know. But I think it's exciting. I think there's a lot there to be excited about. And they did try and spread the information as wide as they could possible. You had your sports, you had all the stuff that you can do with kind of more entertainment stuff like movies, and more importantly, they did show us games. They did show us Forza, which kind of takes a look back to everything that Xbox has been, and they showed us Quantum Break by Remedy, which I know it looked a bit weird. We don't know what it is, CG and stuff, but it looks interesting. It's by Remedy, a studio that most of us respect. I think there's a lot there to be excited about. So if you can one highlight, if you can isolate one highlight, what would it be? Well, they showed a glimpse of the UFC game,
right?
Now,
you're a huge UFC fan.
I'm a massive UFC guy, and obviously there's been a lot of turmoil with that game. Obviously, THQ gave it to EA, and now EA just went quiet with it, as they had to do. So to see that coming back, and obviously they're going to make a big deal out of it. I mean, hopefully it won't just be next gen, because that means I don't think we'll be seeing it till sort of early next year. Hopefully there'll be some kind of current gen thing later this year, but that genuinely was something that I didn't expect, and it was nice to see EA kind of get behind it, as they did with FIFA and Madden, because they're big games, and they now include UFC in there. So hopefully, if they can push it the same way, it's more niche to me. But I think that's the best thing about the reveal. I think there'll be some other stuff that will speak to other people like that too, which is good.
Sure. So the UFC thing was part of. I forget the exact term that they used for EA Sports' next engine. I've got it written down. Ignite. Ignite. Your memory's better than mine. So Ignite is going to kind of be the next iteration of EA Sports franchises.
Yes.
It's going to be exclusive to Xbox. What do you think that meant in terms of UFC in particular, but EA Sports titles in general? It was like better animation, more intelligent AI.
Yeah, I think. They seem to be pushing the whole emotion in sports kind of a thing. Now, I don't know how a video game conveys that really, but I'm not paid to do that, so they have to impress me. So that I'll be intrigued to see what they do with that. But they spoke about getting inside the head of an athlete and stuff like that. So maybe that's pushing more stuff in single player, for lack of a better term, because obviously with the stuff they did with Fight Night, they had that more kind of narrative story. Maybe there's something more like that. Maybe the career modes will be more about what you do away from the field to try and get you to... In UFC, for example, you'll enjoy the fight more because you've built up to it, or something. I don't know. They were very, very, very light on that, which was a bit of a shame, really, because I kind of get what they were saying, but I needed more.
Right.
But again, I can't go back on what I said earlier. I'm sure E3 will reveal more of that. But I'm intrigued by it, and I think that's the most important thing. From the whole conference as a whole piece, I've gone away thinking I want to know more, and that must be a success for Xbox.
Sure. Yeah, they were very... we should say we were sat here at the official Microsoft event. They were very clear about saying that we'll see more of the games at E3 in 19 days, which is what you said. So let's move on from your exciting stuff. And what about any disappointments? Anything you thought that they maybe missed, or...
Nothing. I never go into a conference thinking that I expect to see anything. There's things I would like to see, but I understand they have plans and all that kind of stuff. But if we're being honest, wasn't massively sold on a Steven Spielberg Halo TV series.
Sure.
Now, I like Halo. I think it's a great game. I think it tells great stories. But, personally speaking, that's not enough to make me want to buy an Xbox One. I'll buy it for other reasons, but it wouldn't be on that. And also, it doesn't make much sense to me. It doesn't make what can Spielberg do to the Halo universe on an exclusive TV show? That just blows my brain. What am I even talking about right now? So I didn't really get that, and it seemed to be called Wake Up John,
right,
which would be the worst name for a TV show in history. But again, what did we see? We had a pre-roll from Steven Spielberg, and we had a logo, and we had someone talking about it. But yeah, that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to come away from. I
have to admit, I missed that, but I had to step out. But so did it remind you of a few years ago when they were talking about Peter Jackson's involvement? Do you think it'll ever see the light of day?
This is what I think. I think, is this just for a bullet point list? When we've got this, are you actually investing in it? Will I actually see it? Is Steven Spielberg actually involved, or because he likes games? Like the whole Boom Blocks thing with EA, I never really...
I loved Boom Blocks, actually, but yes.
I thought it was great, but I always thought, have you really been involved in this, or did you just kind of have a sit down and you kind of skept it out? So yeah, then that's something I'd like to know more about. They've got to sell me on that.
Sure.
But I don't think that was for me anyway. Really, I think that's. But then who else is it for? Because Halo's for quote unquote hardcore gamers. You know what? I'm confused by that.
I'm kind of surprised we didn't see a Halo, but again, E3, no doubt. What about the stuff at the end? Because we're here with the Xbox marketing director of UK, and he basically dropped a load of interesting stuff at the end of the presentation, talking about used games, and that's still a bit unclear, I think, at this stage.
It certainly seems to be. Microsoft are keen to say that it will play pre-owned games, but which I think is the most important thing, it seems like there is some caveat that we don't know yet.
Sure.
Maybe there's a licensing fee you have to pay. Maybe it's like Steam, where if you want to renew the license, you have to pay on somewhere else. So I think that is a question mark that needs to be answered quite soon.
Sure.
And I think, a lot of people will be upset that it's not backwards compatible. I'm not really. Yeah. I never really played any Xbox game on my 360. And it's cool to hear that they're still going to support the 360. I don't know. I'm sure that will be a lot of current gens that cross over to next gen, but at least it's not like the Xbox. They just took it out back and shot it in the head.
So backwards compatibility, not a big thing for you. What about the TV experiences stuff? This ability to snap to other, movie experiences, music experiences, either using gestures or voice commands. And the fact in general to have you've got to have Skype, you've got to have Kinect plugged in at all times.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of the stuff that Sony showed me. I think it's great technology, and I think it's really impressive. And I think if they can approach it the right way, it will be, a really good service for someone. I'm not sure that person is me.
Right.
I'm still the kind of guy that puts on his Xbox to play games.
Yeah.
And if they do integrate some of the other services, I'll play it and I'll enjoy it and I'll think it's great, but I'll never actively... I mean, to be honest, I think when I watch TV, I just grab my remote and do it that way. I've never once sat down and thought, oh, good grief, I have to use a remote. I'm all right with it. I think it's quite a handy little tool.
Right.
But it's great to see it, like the snapshot stuff and, how quickly he was jumping from TV.
It's slick.
And also you have to think of it, they're trying to future-proof this stuff. And someone that is maybe sort of 12, 13 now, if this goes for 10 years and it becomes the norm, and they're early 20s, it'll be like they used to use a remote. Like, remotes used to be plugged in, and now we're like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So, I think they're looking forward, which is cool. I don't think anyone could be upset by those kind of announcements. Yeah, but for me, there'll be things I'll always go, that was nice, and then I probably won't necessarily interact with it too much.
They're really keen to stress it's not an always-on connection. You can play games and watch Blu-rays without an internet connection.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of rumours, but sometimes, they are a big company. They're not stupid.
I think they wanted to do it internally. I think they wanted to do it, and they just, someone said, look, you can't do this. It's not quite ready yet. Maybe next generation you can get that.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's a great idea if they could actually implement it in a world where it was flawless. I mean, what a fantastic thing. You'd feel like you connected to the entire world, which is excellent, but it wouldn't work like that. Things would drop out and you'd be sat there on a Friday night wanting to play games going, brilliant, I can't do it, and now I can't watch TV because you integrate TV with it as well, so thanks for that. We'll
see what happens on the UK front with the TV. It was all very, very US focused.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, they did this before. I'm a big NFL guy, and that you watch the E3 conferences, they're saying, oh, we're going to have so much NFL content, and I'm going, I'm excited about this, but what's the point? Because you'll never ever serve me
unless you move to the US.
Well, that's the thing, and I'm sure they'll do that again. But
okay, well, we're gonna leave you, Simon, but we want to make one prediction, and I'm sorry to push this on you.
That's fine.
It will be, what do you think the release date is going to be, and how much do you think it's going to cost?
I think the release date will be early November.
Yeah.
Because that maybe then it ties Call of Duty into a launch game, which is no bad thing.
Which is an amazing thing for them.
And I'm going to go £349.
£349.
That's based on nothing.
Nothing, just guess.
£349.
Like
so yeah, we'll see.
And which date? November 20?
First week of November. Let's say first week of November. So I don't know. Let's say like the 5th of November or something like that.
Good stuff. Thanks, Simon. Where can people find more of your stuff? Where are you online?
Just head up videogamer.com. We've got everything you'd expect there. But yeah, it'd be good to see you there.
Good stuff. And on Twitter?
I'm Simon Miller 316.
Simon Miller.
Because I'm a giant wrestling fan.
Right,
that's embarrassing for a 29-year-old man, isn't it? But at Simon Miller 316 on Twitter. Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Simon. All right, I'm joined now by Nate Lanxon, who is the editor of Wired.co.uk. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you.
So tell us your post reactions of the event here for the Xbox or Xbox One.
Xbox One. 3 ways I think you can look at this. On the one hand, it's basically what we expected, right? So we predicted the specs. We kind of predicted that it was going to be a big focus on entertainment, television, media consumption rather than just games. And games definitely took a bit of a back burner, I think, here. I think it came across as not an afterthought, but bordering on that because most of it was being saved for E3. On the second hand, you can think, well, that is what we expected, but that's still really good. Specs-wise, numbers-wise, it's on par with the PS4. I think the proof will be in the proverbial after-dinner snack as to which out of the box has the real edge in terms of raw graphical sort of prowess, if you like. I mean, when the Xbox 360 and the PS3 first came out, the PS3 definitely had the edge out of the box, but over time the Xbox 360 definitely caught up. And on the third hand, you could think, well, the PS4 is the PS4, this is the Xbox One, 4 is 4 times greater than 1, therefore the PS4 is 4 times better.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that.
I'd go for the second option.
Right. Yeah, I think that was a rumour when the Xbox 360 launched, which was essentially the Xbox 2, that they didn't want the Xbox 2 because that would seem behind the times with the PlayStation 3, which was its competitor at that time. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense, actually. It's weird, but yeah, it's... Yeah, I mean, they could have gone... I
don't think anyone mentioned Xbox One ahead of the announcement. They genuinely kept that under wraps, I think.
Well, they did this quite well because compared to what Sony did. I mean, Sony has never shown the console at a PlayStation launch ever. And everyone was up in arms on Twitter, I remember, like, why they haven't shown it? And I'm thinking, well, they didn't show it at the first one, or the second one, or the PS3. They always save it for the second edition. Microsoft came out and said, here's what it looks like. They got straight into it. They've even told us it's going to be out this year. So,
what do you think about the box, and do you think it's important what the box looks like?
I think more so than ever, yeah, because it's going to replace a lot of boxes for a lot of people in homes. The original Xbox looked like a device for beating whales to death, and was probably very efficient as a whale beating tool. Whereas,
Probably, we don't know, but
whereas this one looks like a very elegant, minimalist, very modern, sleek black slab.
do you think? I thought it struck me as something that Sony's AV division would have designed in the 80s. Is that fair?
The Xbox?
The Xbox,
Well, it's very big, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very big, and I look. They've probably built it bigger so they can slim it down in 18 months.
Oh
So
my God,
It's
Xbox
the
Slim.
Xbox 1.5, or 0.5. Maybe they've shrunk the name as well.
And so overall, was there one thing that you were left impressed by from the presentation today? Was there one thing you came away from and was thinking, oh, I'm going to buy this machine day one?
I'll give you two answers because apparently that's my thing now.
Two hands, one hand.
The one thing that came out that really shocked me was that the new Kinect sensor can detect your heart rate based on how well it can capture the image of your skin.
So you asked this in the post demonstration, in
I
the post video that we had here in London, which Microsoft held. I've written it down somewhere, but I can't actually see what it was. Basically, it monitors your skin, palpitations in your skin.
Yeah, it's basically sensitive enough to monitor the changes in sort of. I want to say consistency of your skin. It's
He definitely said palpitations.
He said palpitations, and that gave me pause because I don't want my Xbox to suddenly say you're on the verge of a heart attack, get off that wobble board, and get back into the gym.
You do want that though. If you're having a heart attack, it maybe could ring the police or the ambulance.
I don't know. If I'm doing workout on an Xbox, I'm inherently lazy. I think but I think the one takeaway, it's a difficult one. Actually, because
maybe is that because you didn't see anything that was that exciting in there? Is that fair to say? I mean, for me, when I saw Forza, it looked fantastic, and I saw Call of Duty, it looked brilliant, but there wasn't that wow moment for me. I don't think.
I really enjoyed the Forza 5 video as a really deep nerdy observation. At least in the video that we saw on a big old screen over there. The anti-aliasing is significantly ramped up over what the Xbox 360 can do. And that, to me, has been a real defining difference between console gaming and PC gaming, is that on the PC side, those edges really are silky smooth.
So no jaggies.
No jaggies. At least in the demo we saw, it looked distinctly different. But how much of that has been tweaked, I don't know.
Okay, well, let me put it another way. Was there anything that majorly disappointed from the presentation? I mean, you mentioned the fact that we didn't see much in the way of games.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping to see more games. I think a lot of my expectations for that were based on the fact that the PlayStation launch was about 2.5 hours, and I had no blood in my legs in New York about halfway through that onwards.
This was a brief hour. It was
very swift,
yeah.
and they got into it very, very quickly. It was very much sit down, right, here's an Xbox, here's a video, and here's everything about it. I think that the Blu-ray stuff is an interesting move, but I was expecting it. But on the other hand, I wondered if they might go into detail on maybe some new download service that they've got. I was certainly expecting 4K. There was no touching on 4K, and I honestly believe that these consoles will, if not at launch, soon afterwards, push 4K. Because these consoles are what's going to bring 4K into our homes. It's not Sony's 4K media streamer thing. It's going to be the games consoles. I mean, it happened with the Xbox and the PS3, the 360 and the PS3. They were the first devices that I think the majority of people owned that brought HD into their homes.
Sure.
They had 720p, HD-ready TVs, but they had no HD content.
Sure.
Suddenly they got an Xbox and they had HD gaming, and it really did, I think, kickstart that transition into HD being a mainstream proposition. And I honestly think that these consoles will do that for 4K. The processing power is certainly there, and I think with the internet streaming efficiencies that we've got now, when even you look at something like Netflix streaming HD over 3G, we're going to be doing 4K streaming.
Right, it's an interesting angle. I mean, you're obviously covering the gaming side for Wired. I mean, have you seen anything in your travels or covering stuff for the website that's really interesting on the gaming side that Xbox should be doing at this stage?
I honestly find myself most excited by gaming on tablets.
Right. Not PC. You mentioned PC a little bit.
No,
there.
I'm not. I mean, I've been a PC. I'm not a PC gamer. I don't own a PC. I own a Mac, and gaming on the Mac isn't that amazing. I mean, I do like gaming on the PC for like RTS and things like that. Certainly played XCOM on PC versus the Xbox, but I just find that gaming on tablets and on the iPad I just find it so compelling, and it makes me forget a little bit about just things like achievements and raw horsepower, and it makes me enjoy just turning on a game and playing for a bit. And I kind of think that some of the best innovation we've had over the last 3 years or so has been either indie games developers that aren't under the control of huge budgets and millions and millions of dollars of investment and having to basically churn out the same old stuff time after time, and the accessibility of the platform for new gamers as well has just meant that a lot of very creative, innovative, fun experimental games have been landing on tablets and on phones. And certainly we've seen none of that at Xbox's announcement today. It was Call of Duty, it was Forza, it was Halo, is a TV series now.
Yeah.
At the PS4 launch, there was a little emphasis on indie developers and stuff, and I'm sure Microsoft has this ready to pull out the bag at E3. I'm not in any doubt. But when you're talking about what do we put in our 60 minutes, what's our top line sell, and there's no mention of anything apart from the big franchises, the billion-dollar stuff. You've got to think, well, I look at what it's on the tablet today, and it's like, here's a 69p game that I've literally played for 40 hours.
Yeah.
Like, I pumped that into Oblivion when it first came out on the Xbox, and here I am pumping it into a tablet. So that gets me very excited, and I think, to answer your question more broadly, I would like to see what Microsoft can do on the tablet side, whether it's with Smart Glass or Windows Phone or Windows 8.
Or Surface, even.
Yeah, exactly. Windows 8 on the Surface. That could tie into this, and they've talked about their cloud processing, 300,000 servers up from 15,000. You think, well, you put that kind of processing power behind the Windows 8, RT Surface that doesn't have discrete graphics, and you think, well, hell, that could be a pretty compelling gaming experience.
I've spoken to you a lot about Japanese games. I presume you're still into your Japanese RPGs. Do you think that's... I mean, we have to caveat it all the time with the fact that well, in this particular podcast, about games will be shown at E3. Is that what's going to get you excited if we see a new Final Fantasy on that console? Or
well, let's be honest, right? If Square Enix came out tomorrow and said we're going to remake Final Fantasy VII and it's on next gen and it's coming out at the end of the year on PS4, there is going to be a collective nerdgasm, and Square Enix is in some financial bother at the moment. I think they would appreciate the hit, and we'd all buy it. Let's be honest.
Sure.
It's going to sell. It's not innovative, but yeah. Well, we're going to see that. I mean, 10. What is it that they're doing? 14. A Realm Reborn.
Yeah. That's the one at E3, I believe. Yeah.
Is going to be shown off. That'd be quite exciting.
So this is cruel, and I know I've just sprung this on you, but if you were to sort of predict a price and release date, what would you go for at this stage?
$299.
$299. Okay. Yep. Cheap.
Yep.
Well, not cheap, but not expensive.
Okay. I'm going to revise that, because I just remembered something they said in the announcement, which was that there's a Kinect in every box.
Yeah.
So $349.
Sure.
And a release in November.
Okay.
Globally.
Release in November. They did say it was going to be globally, so that's broadly in line with.
That's one of my 3 points already correct then.
It's broadly in line with the Call of Duty launch. It's got to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nate, thanks so much for your time. Where can people find more of your stuff?
Wired.co.uk is where I write when I have time, but my amazing team writes on an hourly basis there. And every week we do the Wired.co.uk podcast. We cover tech, science, gaming, all sorts of weird stuff. Search Wired UK in iTunes, you'll find it.
Very good it is too. And on Twitter as well?
Nate Lanxon, Natelanxon.
Great stuff. Thanks, Nate.
Cheers.
Well, that pretty much does it from me here at the Xbox One event in London. If you have any thoughts, questions or feedback, please email podcast@guycocker.com. That's a new address. Or find me on Twitter at twitter.com/guycocker. I'll be back next week with a brand new show. Normal service will be resumed, but thank you very much for listening.